You are watching the LemonAid Podcast with Amar Law Group. Join us as we unlock the secrets and expert tips you need to know now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the LemonAid Podcast with experienced lemon law attorney Shalev Amar, where we talk about how lemon laws protect consumers from defective vehicles. I'm Sean O'Connor, and today we're talking about a vehicle that spends more time in the repair shop than in your driveway. When your car is out of service for days or weeks at a time, the inconvenience, uncertainty, and financial strain add up fast. Shalev is here to explain how out of service time works under lemon law, why it matters, and what consumers can do when repairs keep dragging on with no real resolution. Welcome, Shalev. How you doing?
Doing great. Great to be here.
Well, it's good to see you for sure. I think, this is certainly a topic I can relate to, having recently traded in a car. I'm curious, when you talk about out of service time, why is it such an important factor under lemon law?
Well, there's several reasons why having your vehicle out of service is definitely one of the biggest factors in a lemon law claim, if not the biggest. It's several reasons. So first and foremost, you're paying on a vehicle that you can't use. Even if you're put in a loaner vehicle, very rarely is it the same caliber of the vehicle that you're paying for. And especially if you have a large family, say you have an SUV or a minivan, having a small compact car doesn't work for you and your family needs. If you have a truck that you use either for off-roading or work purposes, then not having a large truck as a rental, which again is rarely the case, really substantially impairs you. And it's just, again, frustrating to see money coming out of your bank account for a product that you can't even use. And so it's definitely one of the biggest, if not the biggest factor in a lemon law claim to have excessive time in the repair shop.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm guessing the time out of service varies from state to state. Do they have different thresholds?
Slightly. At the core of all lemon laws is whether the time in the repair shop, the time that you're without your vehicle, so time out of service, by service meaning service to you, is unreasonable. So that typically means unreasonable under the circumstances. So from one perspective, there is no specific number. It's just what's unreasonable under the circumstances. But on the other hand, state lemon laws have what are called presumptions, which are kind of like guideposts, but they're not requirements. They just help you prove a claim, because if they're met, it shifts the burden of proof from you, the consumer, to the manufacturer about whether the repair history is unreasonable or not. It's presumed to be unreasonable if a presumption's met. So first, let's talk about unreasonable under the circumstances. I would say the less time you've owned your vehicle and the lower the mileage, the more time in the repair shop, the more likely it is to be a lemon. And so as far as more time, I mean, like if it's a high percentage of time that your vehicle's in the repair shop instead of in your driveway and being used by you, then it's more likely to be deemed a lemon. So what's a scenario where that could be the case? Let's say you just bought a brand new vehicle. In the first 3 months, it's already been in the repair shop for 25 days. Now, even though the state that you're in might have a 30-day presumption, and we'll get into presumptions soon, but let's say it's just 25 days, it doesn't meet the presumption. Well, I would contend, and I would assert strongly, that 25 days without your vehicle in just 3 months of ownership and just a couple of thousand miles of use, that is unreasonable. That is kind of an enough is enough portion of the lemon law. And therefore, if it's a substantial defect, you should be entitled to the lemon law remedies of a repurchase or replacement, alternatively to at least be compensated fairly as a compromise. Now let's talk about the presumptions. There is some variation by states as far as presumptions. Now, as far as I know, all the states have a 30-day presumption. However, the way those days are determined, that's what's different. Because some states, it's 30 calendar days, and that's a majority of states, by the way. And in a minority of states, a smaller percentage of states, it's 30 business days. And
Okay.
and that's for automobiles, for cars and for trucks. Now, if a state's lemon law applies to motorhomes, and not all of them do, but if they do, because motorhomes are larger, more complex products, typically the presumption is higher. So the most common presumption for motorhomes is 60 days in the repair shop. So that's where there's some variation. But again, it's for a presumption. And if the presumption's met, it helps you. But you don't have to have the presumption to have a valid case. It just needs to be unreasonable under the circumstances.
How does a driver best document the number of days their car is unavailable, given that, I think a lot of repair shops maybe don't even keep that close a record in terms of when it's in and when it's out?
Well, they're actually supposed to. And in
Oh,
some states like California, they are supposed to say the date in and the date out accurately. And so for the most parts, there are always exceptions, but for the most part, dealerships do accurately, that is, track the date in and date out. And so the number one piece of evidence in lemon law cases is the actual repair invoices. They're called work orders or repair orders from the manufacturer's repairing dealer. And if it's one of the electrical vehicle manufacturers, typically they have their own repair shops. So from the manufacturer's repair shop, in most cases, the vast majority of cases, the date in and the date out is accurate.
yeah.
There are a small percentage of times where the date in and date out is not accurate. There could be a clerical error, or sometimes they might put the date out at a time where they told you that the vehicle was supposed to be ready, but then for whatever reason, they find other issues. It might have to be repaired a few more days, and maybe the invoice doesn't accurately reflect that. And so what I always advise consumers is when you pick up your vehicle, you know when you dropped it off, and you obviously know when you're picking it up. And now that I think about it, people are busy. Sometimes you might not remember the exact date that you dropped it off. So everybody has a little note app on their smartphone these days. Just open that up, put whatever the date of the drop off was, say it's February 15th, just put 2/15 of whatever year it is, and just dropped off my vehicle for X issue.
Right.
Or just dropped off my vehicle for repair. That way, once you pick up your vehicle, you know the current date, because that's the date that you're picking the vehicle up. You can refresh your memory by looking at your notes app. And so you take a look at the date in and the date out. And if it's inaccurate, you get more with honey than vinegar. Don't be nasty about it, but just say, oh, hey, it looks like there was some kind of mistake in listing the date that my vehicle was either dropped off or picked up. Can you please just fix that for me, revise that for me? I'll wait. And normally they'll just fix it right then and there.
Got it.
Now, if you're having an issue dealing with a dishonest dealership, again, there's ways around that. You could take voice notes at the time you drop it off. You can text the dealer when you drop the vehicle off, and you can text them back when you pick it up, or email the dealer upon drop off and email them when you pick the vehicle up. The key is you want to have something in writing at the time that the repairs are occurring. You don't want to get into a hindsight is 2020 situation. You don't want to get into he said, she said situations. With all that being said, it's always best to have the actual repair records be accurate as far as date in and date out.
Yeah, that's That's good advice. It's especially with busy schedules. I had a situation with a car where uh, I had an issue, brought it back to the dealer, said it was fixed, took the car back, and then the issue kept recurring. You know what I mean? Like it's like they thought they fixed it or said they fixed it. How do you account for out of service time with that kind of scenario?
It's a lot easier to explain this if we use an actual example rather than something that's kind of up in the air. So the more specificity, the easier it is to explain this issue. So
Right.
let's say, for example, you brought your vehicle in on March 4th, you picked it up March 14th. That's 10 days right there. Um, in fact, that could actually be considered 11 days because we always want to count the day that we're dropping off the vehicle as an actual day. And if you just subtract, um, you know, 10/4 from 10/14, I'll give you 10 days, but it's actually been 11 days if you actually count the date of the drop off. But in any event, let's say you then are in June for say 20 days. So from June 11th to the 30th, then that would be 20 days there because again we count the date of the drop off. So then what you would do is you add the 10 days and the 20 days and together you have 30. So that's how you do it.
Got it. Got it. What about I had this scenario with a back order on a part. When repairs drag on because maybe parts are unavailable or technicians are backed up or the dealership says they're waiting on the manufacturer. What recourse does the consumer have in that situation?
I could tell you the vast majority of lemon laws, there might be one or two outliers that say if it's something out of the manufacturer's control, you don't count that time out of service. But other than that, I could tell you the vast majority of lemon laws in the States, that's not an excuse.
Got
Because
it.
what you have to look at is do you put the burden of the part not being available on an individual consumer that has zero control over that issue? Or do you put the burden of that on the manufacturer who does have some control on what they produce, on what they manufacture, on what they order, on keeping proper stock of parts to replace for defects and repairs? Who
Hmm.
should that fall on? Should the manufacturer have a defense for not being responsible and not having proper inventory? Or should that fall on the consumer? And I think if you look at it that way, it's pretty obvious that if a part's not available, if there's delays for whatever reason, supply chain issues, well, again, that shouldn't fall on an individual consumer. That should fall on the manufacturer. And that's typically the way the law looks at it.
Yeah, that seems pretty self-evident. I'm curious about how out of service time intersects with safety related defects that can come up. Can a vehicle qualify sooner if the problem creates a risk on the road?
It really varies by state.
Oh,
And that is because some state lemon laws, for example, Oregon comes to mind, Washington comes to mind. Um, if there is a defect that could cause substantial, that is bodily injury or potentially even death, the repair doesn't need to happen as many times. So I would think that it would be a viable legal argument to say like, hey, if this is a major safety issue, it doesn't necessarily need to be in the shop as long to qualify as a lemon. But the reason for that is because there is this other presumption for safety defects where you don't need as many attempts. And in some states, it's just one or two attempts, and then the presumption would come into play. Now, if you don't have that presumption, I still think the argument could be made that, hey, this is a safety issue. Like I couldn't stop my car and I smacked into somebody else,
yeah.
or I'm stuck in the side of the road. that you don't have as much leeway. Like at least that's a tenable argument. Although if you don't have that specific presumption, it's a more challenging argument. But another way to look at it is this: there's two main elements to have a viable lemon law claim. One is that you've had an unreasonable repair history, like I said, under the circumstances. The second is that you have been substantially impaired in use and value by the defect. I would say if it's a major safety issue, then that's almost automatic substantial impairment. There are some state lemon laws where it mentions also substantial impairment in safety. So then it expressly mentions the issue. But even if it doesn't mention that, I would say safety again, because it's your safety, it's your physical well-being, then that's likely to be substantial impairment. So even if it doesn't necessarily reduce the number of days that you need to be in the repair shop to be considered a lemon, and arguably it would, but even if it doesn't do that, if the days out do become excessive overall, our kind of internal view on days out of service is if you have at least 25 days in the repair shop, that's just unreasonable, even if it's less than the 30-day presumption. But if you say have 25 days plus it's a major safety issue, like you're not starting, you're stuck on the side of the road on the freeway, you can't stop the car, things of that nature. You can't control the car, it's pulling to the left or right, which is very unsafe. If you have a major safety defect, I think you have a very, very powerful argument that you meet substantial impairment in use and value, which could sometimes be more challenging if it's kind of a gray area defect, like say something that's not necessary for the operability or safety of the vehicle, something like navigation system, where it's aggravating that it's not working, but you could still use your car and your safety is not necessarily implicated. Or something like the entertainment system, things of that nature, more gray area issues where it can be argued both ways, whether that's substantial impairment or not. If it's safety, it's almost automatic that you have substantial impairment if that's implicated.
That makes sense. That makes sense. You had mentioned earlier loaner cars and that sort of thing. When drivers struggle, maybe they don't receive a loaner car or rental coverage. How do long repair time affect compensation or reimbursement in lemon law cases?
It definitely gives a more powerful argument to say that there should be additional compensation provided in that situation, because one of the areas of law where you can be compensated for not having the use of your vehicle is an incidental and consequential damage called loss of use. Incidental and consequential, it just means that that damage is incidental to or the consequence of the warranty being breached. Now, a common misconception that people have is that they can get both a buyback or a replacement and compensation for loss of use. But unfortunately, under the law, you typically can't get both. It's one or the other. There's three main resolution options for lemon law matters and breach of warranty matters. We generally will bring both a lemon law claim and a breach of warranty claim under what we call the federal lemon law, which is the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act, which is a federal statute, basically a federal lemon law that applies to all warranted consumer products that cost more than $25. It's basically what most state lemon laws are modeled after. The main difference between the federal lemon law and the state lemon law is what you can get under because we're talking about limited warranties. There is a part of the federal lemon law that applies to full warranties, but virtually no companies provide full warranties. They all provide limited warranties. So in the context of limited warranties, what the Magnus-Moss Warranty Act enables you to recover is A, your attorney's fees, but B, as far as compensation, is what's called diminution in value. It just basically means you didn't get what you paid for.
Right.
But another type of damage that you can recover under the federal lemon law for breach of warranty is loss of use damages. The way that is valued is typically the fair rental value of a comparable vehicle to yours is what that loss of use is. So even though you can't get that necessarily with a repurchase or replacement, that is a type of damage that you can get for breach of warranty if you choose to get cash compensation with keeping the vehicle. That can sometimes be attractive if the vehicle is properly repaired. Because most people like their vehicles, they just don't like the defects. Right. But in any event, that's when it could factor into damages. Is like, hey, it would have cost $60 a day to rent my vehicle, or $100 a day times 20 days at $100, that would be $2,000. Right. So that is a point of negotiation. And oftentimes, to be able to get loss of use, you do need to prove failure of essential purpose. Typically, a judge and jury have to agree about that. So some car companies are reticent to offer that out of court if you haven't overcome those legal hurdles in court. But it can at least be a factor in helping to get more compensation.
Well, it's all a lot more complex than I thought coming in. But thanks for that detail. That's going to do it for our time today. But we'll pick this conversation up later. Shalev, thanks very much for all this. Super interesting.
You're welcome.
You bet. That's it for today's episode of the LemonAid Podcast with attorney Shalev Amar. If your vehicle is spending days or weeks in the shop and the problem still isn't repaired, remember, you don't have to keep waiting, hoping, and losing time you can't get back. Enough is enough. So visit ArizonaLemonLawAdvocates.com or Oregon LemonLawAdvocates.com, Washington LemonLawAdvocates.com, Utah LemonLawAdvocates.com, Colorado LemonLawAdvocates.com, Minnesota LemonLawAdvocates.com, New Mexico LemonLawAdvocates.com, and California LemonLawAdvocate.com, or finally, Nevada LemonLaw.info. Or you can call 866-904-2627 for a free lemon law evaluation with Amar Law Group's Fair Free Guarantee. You'll never pay more in attorney's fees than you recover for out-of-court cash and keep resolutions. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review so more people can help find the information they need. Thanks again for tuning in. I'm Sean O'Connor. Have a great day.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and comment below.